Hello, everyone. We're back. Paul's 2070, Lecture 1, Part 2. Unfortunately, the camera that I was using on my computer stopped recording, so here we are again. I was talking for 20 minutes, and now nothing was saved. So we're back at where we left off with King Rehoboam. King Rehoboam, he says, I'm going to tax you more. And the people just get fed up and they say, look, we don't want anything to do with you anymore. So there's 10 tribes. Think of them as 10 states like the United States. So there's 10 tribes that decided they're not going to be part of Israel. And so they're going to go and make their own kingdom. And so you have two kingdoms. So this great kingdom of Israel is now split into two. And really, that is the beginning of the end for the state, the Israelite kingdom, because ever since then it would just get smaller and smaller and weaker, and until finally first the Assyrians and the Babylonians came and destroyed them. So that is the story of the Hebrew Bible. Now we're going to move on to the Greek Bible. So Mark 12:13-17. So this story is about taxes. Um, so the Pharisees come to Jesus and they say, "Should we pay our taxes? Is it right to pay taxes?" But Jesus knew that this is like not a question that's innocent. He knew that they were trying to trap him so that they can blame him for being an upstart, for being a rebellious. Not just a religious leader, but a political leader that's going to take over or create some problem for the Roman Empire. And so Jesus says, "Bring me a denarius, bring me a coin." And whose image is on it? And they say, "Well, it's Caesar's." And so Jesus says, "Give unto Caesar's that which is Caesar's, and give unto God what is God's." And so scholars say that this is the beginning of the separation of church and state. But I think it's a bit deeper than that. I think that from this interpretation, one can certainly argue that it's secularism. That's the foundation of secularism. But I think it's deeper than that. I think it's this way to survive. Because if you look at the context, he's saying that, why are you trying to trap me? So that's the context. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that people take this to mean secularism. And so if that's the case, then the foundation of liberal democracy, specifically secularism, might have its roots in this verse. Whether or not that was God's intent, Jesus' intention, is another story. And it doesn't matter, because as we go forward, it doesn't matter what the truth is. What matters is what people believe that truth to be. So we got to move on to Acts 22 now. And Acts 22 is basically Paul's defense. So Paul is trying to convert people to Christianity. And so he's doing a great job, and people are threatened by that. And because of that, they try to kill him on several occasions. But in this particular occasion, he's calling out that he's a citizen. And so if you look at verse 22, the crowd listened to Paul until he said this. What did he say? I will the whole thing about spreading Christianity. And so what they responded with: "Rid the earth of him. He's not fit to live. So kill him on the spot." And all Paul did was turn to the centurion that was standing right next to him and say, "Is this how you treat a Roman citizen?" And when the centurion heard that, he said, "Stop everything. This guy's a Roman citizen." And that tells you a lot. That tells you that in that context, if you are a citizen, you have certain rights. You can't be killed without a trial. You can't be flogged without being found guilty of a crime. And because you're a citizen, you have these rights. And those things are important to note, because throughout the course, this whole course is about establishing the difference or the notion that there is the state and the government, and then there is a citizen, and the citizen has rights. The state is important because it's the community of people within that state, and that we all have to get along with each other. But then the state, the citizen has inalienable rights, and these inalienable rights are important to everyone, all citizens, all people. The fact that we can't be killed without trial, or we can't be thrown into jail without somehow being found guilty of a crime. This is the foundation of liberal democracy, that we live under in the United States. And so it's important to note that even in the Greek Bible, that in the Roman Empire and in the Greek republics before, and the Roman republics, there is this notion of citizenship. And if you are a citizen, you have those very important rights. And so look at the study guide. Go back to the study, pause it, look at the study guide. We covered two aspects: 1 Samuel 8 and choosing a king, and the Greek Bible readings, the state and the citizen. These are very important things that you need to know for the midterm. And so that's what these lectures are for. These lectures are for preparing you for the midterm. So let's move on to the Allegory of the Cave, another great story by Plato. And the Allegory of the Cave is a very simple message. It's about standing up for what you think is true. So there's this allegory. It's like a story that reflects reality. So the Allegory of the Cave is this idea that there are people chained up, and they're looking at shadows on the wall. And these shadows of the wall, people are trying to figure out what these things are. And they're saying, oh, that shadow, that's a horse, or that's a man. And they're trying to figure out, like, okay, what does it all mean? And meanwhile, when people are squabbling about that, one man is freed. And he looks around and he realizes that if he turned around, there's much more to the world than just this wall with the shadows. And he explores around and he looks around and he finds the exit of out of this cave. And he looks up and he sees the sky, and he sees grass, and he sees the sun, and he gets so excited. So he goes back down to tell his friends and his compatriots who are tied, hey, there's a whole world out there. Why don't you free yourself and come see that world with me? Well, what do? Instead of saying, okay, let's go, they kill him. And so that's the important story of the Allegory of the Cave. Exploring and trying to find the truth can be very difficult, and it can hurt. Many people don't want to consider different opinions or viewpoints that may counter their understanding of the world. It's harmful to them, to their ego, maybe to their mindset, to their belief system. And so many people just don't want to go there. And because of this, they can become very violent, and they reject the truth. But that's not to say that when we find something true, or we think we have an idea, we should try to tell people and share that with people, because you never know. Even if you're wrong, let's say you turn out to be wrong, the fact that people listen to you and interact with you and show you that you're wrong is a learning experience. And so this is what this class is all about. Political theory is all about trying to find out the truth. And in many ways, we are just grasping at straws. We're groping through a dark room in many ways. But this Allegory of the Cave is a very important story. We saw this with Galileo. When Galileo said he thinks the world is round and not flat, the church punished him for that. And so there's a lot of those stories throughout history, and the Allegory of the Cave really brings out this message. So know what the Allegory of the Cave is all about. And finally, we're going to turn to Aristotle. And I think Aristotle is a very important reading. But there's a certain difference between Aristotle and Plato. So Aristotle is trying to describe the world as it is, whereas Plato is trying to say this is how the world should be. And so if you look at the thumbnail for lecture 1 and for this lecture as well, you can see a picture of, in the middle there's Plato and there's Aristotle. In the center, one is pointing up, the other one is pointing down. The person pointing up, that's Plato, and he's saying that, you know, the ideal, we have to shoot for the ideal. We have to always try to imagine what should be, the beauty in the world and so forth. Whereas Aristotle is saying, no, I think we need to focus on what is, and we should try to categorize and try to conceptualize reality and what is, and what is real. And so that's a distinction between these two. Now, one is not more important than the other. They work really well together, because once we know what is, then we can figure out what it should be, how things should be. And I think that's very important. In many ways, Aristotle is the first political scientist, because he tests and he critiques Plato, Socrates, and so forth. And I think it's very important to note. So for the study guide, look at the study guide. What we're going to do now is look at Aristotle's forms of government and its perversions, Aristotle and the state, Aristotle and citizenship. So that's what we're going to do now. So for Aristotle, he focuses on forms and purpose. So what is the form? What is the purpose? So when you think about a horse is, Aristotle would say a horse is a mammal. He's made up of meat, bone, and there has to be an essence of what makes a horse a horse. So, you know, if you think of a horse, right, it has 4 legs. People use it to transport, you know, cowboys and all that stuff. And so that's what Aristotle tries to do throughout his scholarship, is that he's trying to understand the form. What is the purpose? What is the form? What is? And the first thing he says, man by his nature seeks happiness. And happiness is a moral virtue. So happiness is a fulfillment of my function as a man in practice of virtues, living up to my highest potential as a man. So it's about virtue. It's not just about pleasure. It's not about seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. It includes that, but more so it's about finding your purpose. What is your purpose in the world? What is the sort of work you want to do, not just to enrich yourself, but to benefit humanity? And primary for this is to develop a good moral character and to act within this moral character in terms of virtue. So justice is acquired by people pursuing virtuous acts. So happiness is living up to your best self, and that feeds into justice. And one of the things that Plato says is that even though property doesn't bring you happiness per se, knowing that you have property and that there is a defense of private property allows you to actually pursue this virtue, pursue moral good character. There is sort of a pleasure of ownership. And that pleasure of ownership means that there's an incentive to progress and to keep growing as a person, to keep working hard, to keep building and creating that property, creating that goodness and happiness. When you read Locke coming up, one of the things that Locke says is that the government exists to defend life, liberty, and the pursuit of property, not happiness. That's Thomas Jefferson, property. And so Plato says that property may lead to quarrels, but Aristotle says that these evils don't stem merely from having property, but from human nature. So that's a distinction. So property is important in the sense of it creates this virtue, and this virtue allows us to be generous as well. That's a major point. Having property and being happy with the property that you have generates generosity, and that generosity then creates a more virtuous world. So out of virtue creates more virtue. Then Aristotle talks about citizenship. So who is a citizenship? Who is a citizen? So there's four major factors. One, you benefit the community. You act to benefit the community. It's not merely having the right to vote, but to act to the benefit of the community, that you serve the community, that you help administer justice, and that you take part in the judicial administration of the state. So that feeds into knowing how to rule and how to obey. So in order to be a good citizenship, you're going to have to serve. And that's important. So citizenship, there's certain rights and values. There's certain rights that you get as a citizen, but there's certain duties you must perform to be considered a citizen, according to Aristotle. It's not just a give. It's not just a take. It's also some giving. So that's great. So that's the citizen part of it. Now let's move on to the kinds of states. The purpose of the state, and I think this is very important for you to grasp, the purpose of the state is to act to generate the common good and the general well-being of all citizens. So the purpose of the state is not to do anything other than create virtue. And we all are, as political animals, which was what Aristotle talks about. As political animals, we have to live with each other. No man is an island. No person is an island. We all have to interact with other people. And the state exists to generate good behavior and the well-being of people, good life and happiness. And so there's different kinds of states out there that existed in Aristotle's time. And he divides this up in the ideal and the perversion. This is going to be very important for your midterm. There are three major ways in which there's three major states, and then there's three perversions. The first one is monarchy, ruled by one. And it's a good thing if done well. All of these are good if done well, but there's a perversion. So what's a perversion of monarchy? Of having one king? It's tyranny. Like a good king will allow the lands to flourish, but a tyrannical king will destroy by, heavy taxation or anything that you might consider tyranny, and that causes disorder. Then there's rule by the few, or aristocracy. That's the best. Rule by the few. So a few talented people with incredible skill and merit. These people will be benevolent and kind, and they will be able to create a good world. And then there's the perversion, which is oligarchy, ruled by the wealthy to satisfy their own interests. So for monarchy and aristocracy, there's some benevolence, there's some service that the government, the state exists to serve and to create virtue. The perversion is taking that virtue away. And so tyranny and oligarchy are two perversions. The best rule, according to Aristotle, is this one. It's constitutional rule. That's the rule by many. So rule by the citizens according to the rule of law. So there's a law that exists, and citizens obey that law. They don't change the law. They obey that law. They hold that law sacred. And so the citizens are smart, and they have that bigger goal in mind, that mindset of we need to create a good, virtuous state. The tyranny of constitutional rule is democracy. And democracy is mob rule, rule by the poor for their own interests. So the perversion of constitutional rule, according to Aristotle, is democracy. And democracy is mob rule. And that's not what we want. What we want is stability. Even in this country is a representative republic. Not a democracy. There's democratic ideals that have been incorporated into the republic. But that's the representative part of it. This country is a representative republic. And so the constitutional government is when many ordinary men gather with their collective wisdom and they create virtue and prudence. And through the rule of law, not through individuals, not through the mob, that you create this virtuous society, and the law will establish that good laws create good people in that sense. And so the best state found is a constitutional government. So there's a society with a nice a robust middle class, and that creates the best life for the most men or the most citizens out there. And so political moderation is key. Stability is key. We want to make sure that the society is composed of a strong middle class, those people who work hard and generate the wealth. And ultimately, that is the way forward. And as you go on, as you read this idea of Aristotle's work on political animals and so forth, then you can really get a sense of this entire country, or the world's democracy throughout the world is based on the tenets of Aristotle and Plato. And it's in many ways on the lessons that we find in the Hebrew and the Greek Bible. And that's how we're going to start off this course. You have to understand a few things, really. The first thing is that there's human nature, right? In everything, in all the readings that we're going to talk about, there's something about the nature of human beings that is very, very important. And we're going to see this play out, like we talked about in the Hebrew Bible and the Greek Bible. And the importance of citizen, these major concepts, the state, the citizen, the individual, all these are very important. So as you go through the readings, as you go through the study guide, link the study guide and the concepts in the study guide back to the readings. Listen to these lectures over and over again. That's why they're short, so that you can really, make those concepts gel in your minds. And this is my third time teaching the course, and I've enjoyed every time I've taught it. This is the first time it will be online. There will be some challenges, but give yourself a chance. Email me if you have any problems, if you want to talk about the information as you prepare for the midterm, as you prepare for those essays, the first and the second one. And it is my pleasure, so don't feel shy. But use this opportunity to grow as an individual yourself. So thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking with all of you.